What exactly is a true calling and how on earth do we find it? Join me, Annabelle Beckwith, as I speak to numerous women who are on that very journey and from whom we can all learn how to find our own true calling. Hello and welcome to the show. Now, today's theme is From Sadness to Success. Today's guest was enjoying a high-flying career in recruitment until one day her beloved dog died unexpectedly. As she was working through this loss, she started to ask herself, why did it happen? And every time she came up with the same answer: diet. Now today, driven by the desire to help other pet owners really care for their animals, she decided to switch career completely, re-qualified, and is now a canine dietitian with clients all over the world. And yes, her name really is Sally Barker. Let's hear her story now. Welcome to the show, Sally Barker, canine nutritionist. Now, Sally, that is actually your name, isn't it?
Yes, I haven't changed it. I got married to a man purely so I could use that as my surname to do this. No, I didn't. I didn't.
But it is one of those things. I've been speaking to Sally, and it took a couple of conversations before I realised that was actually your name, and how brilliantly it actually fits your true calling, your chosen path as a canine dietitian. But it didn't always start out like that, did it, Sally? So, as with all my guests, I'm just going to ask you to tell your story. Where were you? How did you get to where you are now?
Oh my goodness! Well, it's a complete turnaround from what I used to do. So I was in recruitment for 16, 17 years. I got very high up. I was, pretty competent at my job. I was making, a nice amount of money for myself. And then, as I'm sure a lot of people, maybe in my situation, lockdown hit, which was a factor into kind of me rethinking everything. But just before lockdown, my 8-year-old dog got diagnosed with cancer very, very suddenly. And she had two months to live. Oh my God. And that was just horrific to deal with in itself. But the fact that she was quite young, and we ended up having her put to sleep during lockdown. And it just kind of got me thinking, could this have been prevented? And then I started on a bit of a journey doing research and looking into it a bit more. And I kept coming back to the same conclusion of she ended up with cancer for a whole host of reasons, but everything kept going back to nutrition and kept going back to diet. And she had a whole host of other problems before that from such a young age, autoimmune diseases, IBS, pancreatitis, loads of issues that ultimately just kind of tipped her over the edge. So I started thinking, well, how can I maybe educate people on this a little bit more? What can I do? And on the side, I started up a pet treat business to kind of give me a platform, a natural pet treat business to discuss diet and healthy food choices with pet owners. And that was the Splendid Small Holding. And I ran that business for a while, and everything was kind of built from social media from the ground up with that. And I just wasn't quite giving back what I wanted. So in the September of 2020, I just quit my career in recruitment, which was a huge risk because we were then running the house on a single income. We had all of our animals to look after. My little boy at that point was just 2. So we had childcare. And I just pushed the business forward, but it didn't really seem to be kind of giving me what I wanted and allowing me the path to really, really dig down and help dog owners with their dogs and health problems. I would have people coming up to me on stalls all the time saying, oh, my dog's got this issue, and the food they were feeding and the diet they were giving wasn't right. And I wasn't qualified to be able to kind of give advice. So I retrained. I fully retrained. and I spoke to a lot of people in the industry. I got myself a very good mentor who had been in the industry for 25 years, and I just went for it, and I turned the splendid small holding into the Canine Dietitian Limited. That was, oh my goodness, over 18 months ago now. It seems like I've been doing it forever. It seems like it's really strange, because when I look at myself in recruitment, I feel like it almost wasn't me, and it's a different part of my life. And it feels, and this sounds really, really cheesy, but it feels like my life is it's almost started again doing what I'm doing now, and the satisfaction that I get from it. I always used to think recruitment consultants are probably just hate it. Everybody hates getting a call from a recruitment consultant. It's oh, not you again. And I never felt like I was giving enough or giving enough back, and I've kind of filled that void and that hole by starting this business and giving back to dog owners and seeing results, and seeing not only dogs thrive, but owners become happier as well.
Yes. How, I was like looking a bit vacant there, because I always end up like scribbling a few notes, because in you've said so much there, and I do want to pick up on a couple of points. And it's to go back to the kind of the start of the story, as you say, when you lost your dog during lockdown, and you started to ask questions around, could this have been prevented? Because I'm taking a guess that a lot of people would have mourned the loss of their pet and then got on with life. So what was it that made you think, actually no, I want to stop and explore that? Because I think that's a pivotal point that most people wouldn't have done.
I think so I'll digress a little. Last year, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which kind of really threw everything, my whole life, into my face, and was like, oh wow, that's why I'm like that, and that's why I do that, and that's not a character trait, that's my brain not working properly or working in a different way. But I think it's my hyper focus. So I get very, very hyper focused on something that I'm interested in or passionate about, and that's something that I can never quite let go, and it gives me a sense of satisfaction. So for me, being able to throw myself into the research and finding out the hows and the whys helped me almost grieve and deal with it a little bit better. But I was able to really do that, instead of going, oh well, she was 8, she did all right, next. It was, no, I need to know more. And that's just how my brain works, and it's how I approach a lot of things with my clients as well. I explain the hows and the whys, instead of, oh, you just need to do what I'm telling you. I explain why I'm putting things in place, why we're changing certain things with their dog. Because for me, it's really important. So that hyper kind of focus really made me just want to hone in and learn everything about it. And I don't know whether it was partially me not trying to find a blame for something, because it was a horrible thing to go through, to know that I potentially harmed my dog. Yeah, it's not a nice feeling. It's a very lonely place to be. Yeah. But then if I can turn that into something positive, that was my idea. If I can take what I've learned and what I know and make sure that somebody doesn't go through that prematurely with their pet, then how amazing would that be? Yes, and that kind of, there's a couple of things there. That strong motivation to help people avoid the situation that you're in just now. But it's also interesting you say about ADHD, and I've not been diagnosed, but whenever I read, you read descriptors of people who are neurodivergent, I go, well, I've been doing that all my life. Is that a problem? No, it's just the brain's working differently, isn't it? And this is it where if that wasn't the way in which you thought, the way in which your brain worked, you probably wouldn't be here. So it's almost like that. How is it part of your zone of genius moving forward to really explore what's going on? And that coupled with your design, not just, oh, I'm curious to know why, but actually let me help other people to not be going through this, through the knowledge that you've picked up, I think are really
are really, really sort of key factors there. Now, one of the things that you said is you started up the pet treat, that sort of natural, nutritious pet treat business.
Yes.
And then you blithely said, I pushed the business forward. And quite often what I find in these conversations is it's those things where people will say, and the business grew, I pushed the business forward. You think, oh, now that's the bit. How did you push it forward? And what sort of things did you do to push the business forward? Because there's a whole lot in that little phrase there.
Yeah, I think, what didn't I do? So making your own pet treats is a very, very strange world to be in, because there's so many rules and regulations. And there's so many different ways you can do it. So all mine were vegan dog treats, because if you want to put anything that's from an animal, including honey, into your dog
including
treats,
honey. Oh my goodness.
any animal byproduct, you have to be registered and approved by DEFRA. And then,
what does DEFRA stand for?
So it's the Department of Environmental Food Regulations.
Right. Okay. So it's a government body for those watching.
Absolutely.
Internationally.
So, I was registered with Trading Standards, and I still have to comply with all the labelling and all the analytical constituents, so your proteins, your fats, everything had to be right on there, which took a lot. And I had to print all my labels and all the packaging and everything. So I couldn't add any kind of animal byproducts into there. And it costs probably about £8,000 to become DEFRA approved, with all the testing that you have to go through. They don't make it easy for small businesses to do. And then you've got to keep up with the testing. So I did that. I was doing markets locally, all around kind of Yorkshire area, North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire. I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was baking my treats every single day. It was taking up so much of my time, and I wasn't really seeing anything for it. So it was kind of, I was building on social media, I was building locally to sell locally. And it got to a point where the effort and what I was being able to achieve was just kind of not proportionate anymore. And one of the reasons, obviously, starting your own business is the flexibility that you get from that. I had a little boy. It just wasn't working. It wasn't working for where I needed to be. And I dismiss it. I'm like, oh, that didn't work. That's rubbish. And my husband goes, well, it's not, because it put you where you are today. If you hadn't have done that step, you wouldn't be where you are now without that step. So I see it as just kind of almost a stepping stone. Right. And maybe it was my own fear of doing what I really wanted to do initially. So that was a way of going, oh, well, I'll just do this and kind of test the waters, because it's a risk. And I think owning my own business and doing this now has taught me that I probably take a lot more risks than I used to.
How interesting. And again, just in that piece there, I think sometimes when, it's easy when we're looking at, people are talking about how they've got to where they are and they're in a good place. It's exactly those phrases like, I push the business forward. And it's not easy. As you say, you're getting up at 5 o'clock, you're doing everything, you're jumping through hoops to make sure that you're adhering to the legally required standards and so on. You've got a family, you've got a veritable menagerie of animals to look after as well. Chickens, ducks, fish, what else? Goats, and dogs. So you've got a lot going on. So it's also that pushing through and making the effort. These things don't happen overnight. I think it's really interesting as well when you say that on balance it wasn't working out for you, because I think that's one of the things that oftentimes the message we get is like, don't give up, keep going. And you think, yes, keep going. Don't give up on yourself and on your vision. Yeah. But it may be that you need to change direction because the specific thing you're doing isn't yielding what it needs to yield. So there's that balance. It's not kind of plow on regardless whether it's working or not, is it?
No, absolutely. And I think for me, I'm such a perfectionist. refocused. And I always thought again that was just a character trait, but actually it's my ADHD, where I'm my own worst critic. And I don't need anybody else to criticize me because I've already done it 100 times over. But also the sense of failure and the sense of shame that comes with that was something that I think I've dealt with a lot better since being diagnosed, because I understand it a lot more and I'm able to research. But then it was a very, very difficult thing to let go, because you, especially as a woman, I think there's a lot of, oh, you can have it all. You can have it all. You know, you just need to work harder. You just need to be better. You just need to do more. And it's like, what does that even mean? What does all of that mean? And I think it made me realise that actually my priority was my family, which I never in a million years thought I'd say, because my priority was always work, money, work. And then I had George and was like, oh, I've got a baby now. Oh, well, that's all right. Everybody does it. Work, money, work. Oh, I can't do this anymore. I'm burnt. I'm absolutely frazzled. And I think it made me just change my perspective a little bit and what I actually wanted in life, and made me kind of regroup and go, well, if it means me doing all of this and sacrificing that, I'm not prepared to carry on. And it was hard. It was very hard for me to go, it's not working. But ultimately, it just tied in so well. The more advice I was then giving to people about nutrition, and I just thought, this isn't where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And just what you're saying there, and this is something that I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, and a lot of women. Not only do we have to have it all, and family and work and media superstarship, we've got to be beach body ready. It's like, for goodness sake, you know, when will it ever end? But that point where it's like we are put under so much pressure by other people's expectations, and what you say there is and also I think oftentimes entrepreneurs of men, women, everybody are. It's almost like we're given this message, well, you've got to sacrifice things. You've got to, and you think, well, yes, you do. I mean, you sacrificed sleep in that you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make the dog treats and so on. But we get to decide. Everybody as an individual gets to decide what they sacrifice. And your family, your health, your mental well-being, your values do not have to be on that sacrificial altar. They don't. It's exactly the point where you decided, this isn't working for me. I'm going to redefine my priorities or realign work and life according to my priorities and according to my values as a
and I think I went through a phase of reevaluating my values, which was just again crazy. So I gave up money. I gave up a very lucrative career, and I gave up my own financial stability, and I put it in the hands of my husband, and having to kind of go, can I have some money for, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But we're married and we're a partnership. And it took me 2 years to maybe get to a point where I was okay with leaning on him financially. Because I no longer define my success by monetary value. And I never thought I'd be there. But because of the job I do, I can define success in so many other ways. But when I was in recruitment, that was the only singular way I had to define success. That was it. I couldn't give back to anybody. It was just, it was a bit heartless. It was just a bit of a kind of, that's the only thing I had to gain from that career was money. Yeah. And now I gain so much more. I gain time with my family. I get to be able to, put my work down when nursery call and go, George is sick. Can you come pick him up? Yeah, I can drop everything. I don't have to take half a sick day unpaid. I can take holidays when I want. I'm not on, 20 days holiday I used to get a year with like barely any pension and statutory sick pay, no maternity. It was just, so what it just made me kind of go, actually, what do I now see as success in my life? And that just doesn't even come into it anymore.
Yeah. And it's when you say, this has happened in the last 2 years, 18 months. So, and your business is growing. I know from previous conversations we've had, it's almost kind of like doubling year on year with the number of clients that you've got internationally. But it's just to come back to that point where you were saying it's not that money doesn't define success. And I think this is another message that we get bombarded with, particularly on social media, where somebody's accepting an award and somebody else is having a cocktail at some fancy schmancy beach bar, or somebody else is, and you think, is that what it's about? Absolutely fine. It's lovely to have these things, but but as you say, reevaluating your values and your priorities was a key thing. I also want to pick up on a point where, because I think this is very, very rarely spoken about with business owners and entrepreneurs, where you said it didn't work and you felt a sense of shame and failure, and it was your husband who said to you, and, in some instances, it might be supportive partners, it might be friends, it might be a mentor to say, no, this is just a step along the way. It's just a step. You've learnt from it. You've recognized what works and what doesn't work. You've learnt about yourself. But I think this sense of shame and failure, when one of the strategies, one of the things that we try doesn't work, is something that impacts a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. And how did you work through that in terms of your mindset? How did you get beyond that and turn that, right, well, that didn't work, into a learning point rather than a kind of something that brought down your self-esteem, for want of a better phrase?
I don't know if I actively did anything in particular, if I went, I need to do that to kind of get through that, but I did. Again, the hyper focus thing, I just tend to throw myself into something else. So obviously the nutrition side was, I'll throw myself into new qualifications. I rebranded. I did all of my rebranding, all of my colours. I did everything. I rejigged my social media, and I really, really went to town on my social media and being present, setting up the values. So for me, I think the only way for me to do it was just to go start again, and just focus on something else and see the success in that and building that. And don't get me wrong, like every single day I said it last night to my husband, I went, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm having a bad day. And that's like, and he's like, okay, I have bad days, Sally, but I'm not gonna I'm extreme. I'm very extreme. And I have days where things just aren't working well, because I do everything. I do all of it myself. And it's a very lonely place as well, where I'm sat there and I'm used to having a team around me and talking to people, and it's just me. It's just me. But yeah, so I learned a lot. I learned that, money doesn't equal success. Yes, I have to make money to live and to keep my business going, but it doesn't define who I am. I think it also made me, looking at that, just look at the values, and really everything I do, especially on social media, all the time, I believe in morals, and I believe in ethics, and I believe in being realistic and real on social media. And that is me. When what you see is what you get. So with people, all of my clients, I think 99% of my clients have come from Instagram, the way I've built my social media. But when they speak to me, they're like, oh, you're exactly how you are on your social media. And I'm like, this is
that's what you want to hear, isn't it? Yeah.
It's nice. And I actually had the day before, somebody booked a consult. And I always say to people, what made you book a consult with me? Like, how did you come to this decision? And she said, I like the way that you come across, and you're non-judgmental, you've got ethics, you've got standards, you're not putting up this kind of front of what you think people want you to be. And you talk a lot about mental health on your social media. And she said, and that's somebody I want to align with. And I thought, and that had nothing to do with her dog. That's
it. That's absolutely it, isn't it? And it is that thing about when you are being authentically yourself, other people who see that and who appreciate that will be drawn to you. By the same token, other people who don't have the same value set will go, oh no, somebody, and that's fine. It's almost like people are selecting themselves or deselecting themselves by the fact that you're being authentic. And I thought thank you for being so open and honest by saying, oh, I was thinking I don't want to do this anymore. I think that all of us at some point have gone through a phase where we would rather torch our business to the ground than work in it for another day. And it is that thing about it is what it is, now what, and it's one of the phrases that somebody said to me once a few years ago was, you didn't come this far just to come this far. And
yeah.
I thought, yes. It is that. Is this the sort of thing, focusing on the positive, and as you say, all of the things it's given you in terms of your lifestyle, your ability to spend time with your son and so forth. That's part of the mix. Now, if I could just move it on a little bit, because with what you're doing now, providing canine nutrition advice, one of the things you said earlier on in the conversation was that you felt that when you were in recruitment, I'm just kind of slyly looking down at my notes here, one of the things that you said is that you felt that it wasn't really you in recruitment. And so from that, I'm reading between the lines and having a sense that this is you coming back to yourself with what you're doing now.
Yeah, it was not, don't get me wrong, I loved my job. It's a very cutthroat environment. I had some amazing experiences and some really horrible life-changing experiences. But what I felt I had to be was, I was always told I needed to be something else, or you shouldn't be like that, or you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this. And I realized at that point in my life was when I masked myself, and we talk about masking a lot within the neurodivergent community, because you feel that you mask how you are because you want to put on a front as to how you think people want you to behave. And I did that a lot. And something I was actually looking at, going back over, I was talking to my friend about it a couple of months ago, was I remember at one firm that I worked in, because I am quite out there and I am chatty and I am very personable and I like all of that. But part of that is a mask, because I'm naturally a highly anxious person. I don't really like being around a lot of people. So people see this gregarious individual and presume that, oh, well, Sally's just this amazing person. And then when I don't feel like that and I'm concentrating, or I shut down a little bit, I go very quiet and I go insular and I want to focus. And I had it at a company where I was pulled into a meeting room. They said, your behaviour is affecting everybody. And I was like, what behaviour? I can't be like this all the time. I'm quiet and I'm contemplative and I've got a lot of work going on and I'm quiet. And she said, I remember it. She said, when you are happy and lively, you really, really positively affect the room. And when you're like this, you bring everybody down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I bring everybody down. This is horrible. I don't want to be like this. So then I masked even more because I didn't want to be that person. But actually, it is not my responsibility to make you all feel great that day. That's not. It's not. I'm not screaming abuse at you. I'm not shouting at you. I've gone a bit quieter.
Getting on with your job. Yeah.
But it affected me. And I carried it with me a long, 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 long time and thought, it's my responsibility. I have that power. Oh, and I constantly would think, oh, God, you don't talk to people like that, or don't say that, or just keep quiet, or you're too quiet. And it was horrible. It was it's exhausting. So I always felt in recruitment that I always had to be somebody else because people didn't like the true way I was. Right. And now I'm just me, and it's freeing, and I feel like a different person. But I'm not a different person, but I was, because all I was doing was just masking how I was.
Mask off. Yeah.
I didn't want to affect other people, and I took full responsibility that because you felt bad that day, it was my fault because I was a bit quieter. So I'll be life and soul of the party, and it is freaking exhausting. It's just to do that constantly and all the time. And then to come home and to a certain extent do it with your family as well, and have to be, you know, switched on and amazing and And after I actually had George, I think that's when I wasn't able to keep up this front anymore. And I had really bad postnatal depression with George. And after my ADHD diagnosis, the psychiatrist said, you probably didn't, but what happened was you were that overwhelmed that it just, you weren't able to mask all of this anymore. And it just,
Yeah, and isn't that's such an important factor, because I think there's many environments where we feel we need to be a certain way in order to fit in, and there's social norms, you know, obviously enough, but this sense of responsibility that because you're like that, everyone's feeling like that. It's like, how can that, you know, why are people not responsible for their own emotional state and their own emotional well-being and so on, and that constant mask wearing, and at that point it does turn into toxic positivity, isn't it, where it's like happy, and it's, and that's not honest, it's not authentic. And just to kind of turn it around a little bit, you said that one of the things that you do in your work currently is, obviously enough, the focus is diet and nutrition for dogs. But you said that mental health and mental well-being is something that you talk about there. And to what extent does that come into your work with pet owners?
Oh, all the time. Every single day, I will have somebody in tears on me. And what did somebody say to me? She said to me, not only do I feel that you're a nutritionist for my dog, but the way that you make me feel so amazing about just being me and a dog owner, you know, you're like a counsellor as well. And I never pretend to be a counsellor because I'm not qualified to do that. But I reassure people that, you know, your dog is poorly and it's not your fault. Or we can only do the best with the information that we have. And I'm just very honest. I think I did a post on my social media about why my dogs aren't good for my mental health a lot of the time. And social media is, I love it because I gain my clients from it. Yeah. I hate it sometimes. I just hate it. I really, really don't like it. It can be very, very toxic. Yeah. And I have to take breaks very frequently from social media, because it's damaging, and it's not real to people, but then to some people it's very real. So, you know, you'll have people sending you messages that are horrific and abusive that they would never say to you in the street. And then on the same hand, you get people posting something that is completely not real and then people go, oh, and judge themselves by those standards of a picture that just appeared in a moment on social media. Yeah. And I like to cut through that with especially with dog owners, to go, you know, you're not alone. Most people aren't like that. That isn't real. You're going to be okay. You're doing the best you can for your dog. And it's something that I see a lot of the time. It's a very, very horrible place to be when people make you feel that you are doing something bad for your dog a lot of the time. And I always think to people, you'd never do that to somebody about their child.
No.
You see it all the time, like, oh, you're feeding your dog that, you're going to kill your dog, or you're training your dog like that, you're going to kill your dog, or it's really a horrible environment to be in. So I'm very much, I post things about nutrition, but again, I post other things to just help people feel better that day, whoever needs to hear it. There's loads of different things that I post, like, it's none of my business how somebody else feeds their dog or trains their dog, because I'm not paying for it. I don't live with that dog. I don't have to deal with the vet bills. And I think if we all just take a step back before we decide to comment on somebody else's social media that hasn't asked for your opinion, we'd all be in a better place. But I also encourage people to call other people out that do that and to go, that's not okay. That's not okay. If I don't agree with what that person's doing, but it's not okay that you're saying what you're saying to people.
Yeah.
So not only have I built a business through my social media, I've created an amazing community of people that now all get in touch with each other because they've followed me, and they, you know, listen to my lives and they like my posts, and they all go to each other for help and advice, and it's great. And I'm really, really proud of that I've created that culture, because I won't stand for any negativity or any bullying or anything like that around my social media at all. It's not good.
Yeah, and that's brilliant that you're actually, by being yourself and by living your values, you're building a tribe around you. And it's a sad thing. I think there's a lot of toxicity around marketing psychology anyway, where it doesn't matter, you know, whether it's this or something else. It's like, you're doing something wrong. Here's why you're going wrong, and here's the disaster that's going to befall you if you don't buy my product.
Oh, I know.
That happens absolutely everywhere. But just to sort of rewind a tiny bit, you said there that you get like abusive, you know, messages from people who are, and that actually, when we first spoke and when you first told me that actually really shocked me, that here you are living your values, and then somebody feels that they've got the right to actually level abuse at you because of your chosen path. And my guess, without knowing the circumstances of it, is in some way they feel threatened by what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think I'm a people pleaser. So my immediate thing when somebody says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that because of X, Y, and Z, or you don't know what you're talking about because of X, Y, and Z, my immediate reaction is to appease that person and defend myself. Yeah. And I've stopped doing it because I have, and it's hard for me, but I don't owe that person anything. They're not a client of mine. They're not paying me for any service. I don't know them. And I definitely don't owe you an explanation as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I don't even engage. The best way is to not engage. Yeah. And typically other people, if they comment on something, will engage. So what I do is I just delete the comment, because then what I don't want is in my comment section of people sticking up for me, which they will naturally do that. And then people having a go at them, and then they feel bad because someone said something horrible to them. So I see it and I delete it. I had somebody call me, what did they call me? Oh, I hate seeing women like you on the internet who think they're better than everybody else. You're so self-congratulatory, and all you're doing is running a crappy business from your house. And I was like, oh, okay. And all I put was, thank you for your comment. That says way more about you than it does about me. Yeah, doesn't it though? It's like, here is somebody. It does. Like, I don't know you from any, your opinion should not matter to me. I do not know you. Your opinion doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think that's a really critical thing. It's like, do I know you? Do you know me? And if anybody is, because sometimes, let's face it, well-meaning friends and relatives or whatever will say, I don't think you ought to be doing that. And are they doing it to build us up? Are they doing it because it's something that they wouldn't risk doing? Or are they just to pull us down and to think, well, what's the intention behind that? Exactly. One of my previous guests on this show, Joanne Robinson from the Little Art School, she and Melissa Haddow are guests in another episode. She was telling me once that when she was a student, she was quite strident. She went to Oxford University. She was involved in the rowing. She was getting involved in something. And she said she was at an event, and somebody who she wasn't aware of this person. She might have seen them around, but somebody came up to her and said, listen, I've just got to tell you this. I really hate you. Now, if somebody had, I would have crumbled. No, in my 20s, I would have gone, oh my gosh. It would have been a moment of and Joanne, she said, I turned around and said to that person, I don't even know who you are. and she was saying, I was probably being a bit cocky. And I thought, no, that was exactly the right thing to say at that particular point. So again, it's that, what are you choosing to engage with? And I really like what you say there, Sally, about not feeling the need to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge thing. Sometimes when somebody comes at us, it's like, yes, but, and I've been doing what I'm doing for the best part of a quarter of a century now. But
I used to feel really self-conscious that I've not got an MBA, I've not got a PhD, I've not got shed loads of qualifications, and so I would feel the need to explain that and go, yes, but I haven't got a, and immediately it puts you on the back foot. Whereas now, if somebody says, and what are your qualifications? I will tell them I've got a degree from an excellent British university in English language and literature.
Same as
me. 25 years. So, that's not the point. I think it is also, as you grow in experience, and as you say, you've got clients coming to you saying, you are just doing such wonderful things. You've saved my dog's life, etc., etc. That's why you do it. That's the feedback to listen to, not the moron who's who's just got their own problems and is having a go at you.
Yeah, and my mentor Emma, she's a very, very good friend now as well. But I was having a lot of I remember I'd messaged some people, so it was when the Ukraine thing was happening, and I was like, how can I help? I'll try and donate some of my 10% of each consult to a refugee fund. And I messaged a couple of other dog people. There was one particular pet shop online, and I messaged her and with a message saying, would you be able to share this story? And it didn't go through, and I was like, it's a bit weird. So I went on her profile and she'd blocked me. And I was like, and then a load of other people that she kind of influenced had blocked me. And then that's when the horrible things started, where people were spreading horrible, vicious rumors about me. Things were coming up on Facebooks. And I didn't engage with anybody for 2 weeks. I think at one point I was in bed for 2 days. It affected me that badly. And Emma said to me, right, why sit with this? Why are you so bothered? You've got to really think about not why are they bothered about you and why they've done that, but why is this really bothering you? And it comes down to the fact that I just want people to like me.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And that's not a horrible thing, but I have to be very, very selective now and go, well, you know what? It doesn't matter if you don't like me. I'm not actively going out hurting people. I haven't done anything to hurt you. If you just choose not to like me and to behave like this, then that's absolutely fine. And then I had it again maybe 6 months later with a vet who was horrible online, and getting in different individuals with accounts to put things up on their Instagram and their stories about me. And it was damaging. It was really damaging, to the point where she nearly got reported. And it was, so, you've got to be very careful what you say and do on social media. And I think people don't see any ramifications. So when you do something to somebody on social media, you don't see that person crying at home on a night. You don't see the turmoil that they go through. You don't see how it affects their relationship with their kids or their family. You don't know what else they're going through in their lives, that they can't physically or mentally deal with that. You have no ramifications at all from saying what you're saying. And it's nasty. And I think it's probably one of the worst things that you can do to somebody. And I ended up putting a post out about it saying, can all the people involved in this please stop this, because it's really damaging my mental health. And then loads of people sent it. It had so many likes on my social media, and loads of people were putting it up on their stories and sharing it. And within 48 hours, it had stopped. And what I found was people were rallying around me who followed me, who I'd never met in my life, who were finding out who these people were and were calling them out and messaging them going, you're doing damage, please stop this. And it just spread and spread and spread, and it stopped. Because you have to stand up for it, and you have to stand up for other people when it's happening to them. My mum always used to laugh at me because I always used to get in trouble at school for sticking up for people, and I've never been somebody to sit on the fence. Ever. And I will always stick up for people. I'll never go, that's not my battle. I will fight it. And then people started doing that for me, and that's when I realized I've got a really, really good community.
And it's one of those things that I think for many people, they would have suffered in silence and just kind of weathered the storm. But the fact that you said, actually, this is really affecting me, and you were authentic in that way, also got people thinking that it's not just I'm lobbing a grenade. The other thing that I find, that fills me with dismay, I have to say, is that from these last two instances were both women. And it's like
all of them. Every single one has always been a woman. And then I had a lot, and it was right before International Women's Day, and then some of them were posting posts going, back your women-led businesses, we need to stick up for women. And I was like,
hello, sorry, isn't that disappointing? And I think that's it is distressing when we see that, and it's like, ladies, we can do better. Gentlemen, you can do better as well.
Absolutely.
In other ways, but we're not helping ourselves there.
No.
Why? No. And in those instances, I have to just trust to God, trust to karma, that you reap what you sow. If you're sowing toxicity and poison at some level, that is going to come back to you. Absolutely. So just to draw things to a close, Sally, what's next for you? How do you see this growing and your community and your tribe?
Yeah, so I think for me, organic growth is really, really important. So there is just me doing what I do. In the last year, I've finally got a website. I never needed a website because I had that much traffic through social media.
Mm-hmm.
My website is now just a way to direct people to my website to book, so I don't have to deal with all of that. What's next? I've done a lot. I don't think I have. I've done a lot in the last 18 months. I've got a huge international presence now. So I'm insured to work with dog owners internationally, clients in Australia, clients in America, Canada, India, all over the world.
Wow.
I think next for me is consistency. It's consistency and just making sure that I'm reaching more people, to grow my social media more. Something I don't do is affiliate. So I don't get paid by any brands. I could get loads of free stuff for my dogs if I did, but I don't. Lots of people that do what I do will launch their own products and supplements, and that's great, but it's not where I want to be. So I'm very much, I want to be part of my dog owner's journey like this, face to face. So I'll never really get paid by anybody. I've turned a lot of work down because I haven't agreed with the company and their ethos and their ethics and why they want to start dog food companies or supplement companies. So I've turned a lot down, which a lot of people wouldn't have done. They would have taken the money, but that's not where I want to be. So I just want to grow with me. I'd love to start a course for people, which would be great. So dog owners could do a course where they could learn about all of this. And I think it's all about education. So the more people I can educate, that we can then educate other people and just kind of spread that outwards and get rid of misinformation, the better. So that's probably my plan for the next year, is just to keep growing organically.
Yeah.
That is it. That is, I'd love to rule the world, but it's probably not going to happen.
Anyway.
And just be happy. Do you know what? Yeah. When I was little, my mum and dad worked very, very hard. And I was always in, and this sounds really stupid, but I was always in after school clubs. And absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Sally's gone. Oh, you're back.
I'm here.
You were always in after school clubs and breakfast clubs.
Always in after school clubs. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're there for a reason. And absolutely. But it always used to make me really sad as a child that I wasn't with my parents, like picking me up at the school gates. I will be able to do that with my little boy. Yeah. So for me, that is a huge thing for me, like next year, because he goes to school in September, to be able to work my work around him and have that time. I'm so lucky. I'm really, really lucky.
Fantastic. Sally Barker, it has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you today. Sally, you can find Sally at thecaninedietitian.co.uk. So dog owners around the world, connect with Sally. Sally Barker, you're not going to forget that name. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's clear to see that what really drives Sally is her love of animals and her desire to help and educate pet owners. And clearly from her experiences, it hasn't always been easy. There have been changes. There has been the challenge of juggling work and family, and there have been naysayers who want to tear her down rather than build her up. But it's her true calling and her purpose and her strength of character that have carried her forward. Friends, whatever you do today, choose to take steps in the direction of your true calling.